Hi everyone, it's Joe from Homegrown Musician and welcome back to another video. So as I'm sure you can already tell, the music that you've just heard in the opening sequence wasn't actually composed in a standard DAW. So I was scrolling through Instagram the other day and I came across this software that I'd never heard of before called Nodal 2, and it is just a massively different experience. So how Nodal works is instead of using a MIDI note editor or even traditional notation, you make compositions by building giant networks of nodes on an X by Y grid. It's a really different way of working and I actually really like it. I'm only using the trial version at the minute, so unfortunately I can't save my projects, but that doesn't matter. I'm really enjoying just deep diving into something completely new, and I massively recommend it for any like experimental composers or even people like producers who just want to try something a bit out of the box. So it's a really different interface to anything else I've ever used before, and at first it was a bit difficult. You could even say it sent me dotty. Dad joke. However, it did take me in a slightly different compositional direction to what I'd normally do, just because of how the interface lends itself. Some things it works well for, other things it definitely doesn't. Anyway, in today's episode, I'll be running through the basics of Nodal and showing you what I've come up with. So when you first open Nodal, here's what you'll see. In the middle, you have the grid window where you'll be doing most of your working, and you'll place the nodes which will make up your composition. In the top left hand corner, you'll have the toolbar where you decide the function of the mouse. In the top middle, you have the transport bar where you can start and stop the piece and change its tempo. And on the right hand side, there's the inspector window which controls most of the behind the scene work in Nodal. So making music in Nodal kind of works like a circuit board. As the musical current flows through the network that you've made, it triggers nodes along the way, playing the musical note that you've assigned to them. Once the current reaches the end of the line, the piece will stop unless you force it to loop back to the beginning, in which case it will go on for as long as you want it to. Now you can be really precise and craft carefully constructed compositions that take hours to make, or you can just build patterns and see what they sound like. This one's a dog. So the grid provides us with no pitch information whatsoever. It only refers to the rhythmic length of notes. Each square on the grid refers to one beat at the given tempo, with the smaller sections in between being subdivisions. However, this can be changed in the inspector window, and you can set how many squares you want to refer to how many beats. This means that unlike in traditional music where we read left to right, rhythm in Nodal has no direction and can be read the same up or down or left or right. So the rhythm of a note in Nodal is determined by the distance between itself and the node it's attached to. So now I'm going to show you how to make your first loop in Nodal. Quick note, the loop I'm making is at 300 BPM, so if you're going to copy me exactly, just change that. So first thing you want to do is select the node tool from the transport bar. This is used to make nodes and connect them together. Now for my example, I'm going to make 6 evenly spaced nodes a beat apart. Then, with the node tool still selected, click and drag to link your nodes together, but make sure the direction flows in one way. Now reselect the pointer tool and click on any node. On the right hand side, the inspector will have moved to the node menu. From here, you can change the node's pitch, velocity and length. To change pitch, click in the box and type in the pitch that you want. So at this point, you're probably thinking we'll start hearing some sound, but we have one thing left to do. Go back to the tool menu and select the voice group tool. Now this basically tells Nodal where you want the piece to start. Then click on any of the nodes and this will be the starting point for your piece. Then go to the transport bar, bring your piece to the start and click play, and at this point you should hear something. So thus far, I've only done this in Ableton, but I'm assuming it probably works in other DAWs as well. So the first step, go into the inspector window in Nodal, hit the document tab, go down to MIDI sync inputs and check Nodal input. Then move to the instrument tab, select an instrument, move down to port and click Nodal output, and then make sure you're running on MIDI channel 1. Then go into Ableton, the preferences menu, the link MIDI tab, and then move down and check Nodal output on track and Nodal input on sync. Then finally, make a MIDI track in Ableton and choose the instrument you want to use. Make sure it's receiving MIDI input from the Nodal output and select MIDI channel 1. Then record on the track, and when you play in Nodal, all of a sudden you'll be using the Ableton instrument. Now, one of Nodal's strengths is that the musical flow doesn't have to move in one direction. You can actually change it by using the node behavior to make your compositions more interesting. So I've mocked up this little idea to demonstrate. As you can see, the node in the middle kind of acts like a pivot, and it can either send the musical flow upwards for one ending or downwards for the other. Now, the first behavior I'll demonstrate is sequential, which is actually the default setting. So if I click on the node, you can see that one path is highlighted in orange and the other in green. Now, when the node's first triggered, it'll send the flow down the orange path. The next time it's triggered, it'll send it down the green path. If you want, you can change the order in the inspector window, or you can even change the number of times that the node will send the flow down one path before moving on to the next one. So the next behavior I'll demonstrate is parallel. Now, this one's actually pretty simple, and basically whenever the node's triggered, it'll send flow down all paths that are attached to it. Now, in the setup that I've currently got running, I accidentally made a feedback loop because the two flows return to the start point at the same time, which will eventually cause distortion. To avoid this, you just need to make sure the flows actually come to a decisive end, but that will end the piece unless you find a way around it. The final behavior is random. As I'm sure you've already guessed, when it's triggered, the node will randomly send flow down any of the paths attached to it. Now, up until this point, I've only been demoing with one instrument, but you can add more if you want to, and you can even change the instrument halfway through a composition. So to explain this, I'll keep going with Ableton instruments. So the first step is to make another MIDI channel in Ableton. Make sure to set the input as Nodal output and to move on to MIDI channel 2 as it's a new instrument. Then choose a different instrument to use and make sure you record armed. Now go back into Nodal, go to the inspector and move to the instrument tab. Then click the plus button on the right hand side to make a new instrument, and just as before, highlight that instrument, move down to port and select Nodal output, but this time make sure it's running on MIDI channel 2 as it's the new instrument. Then go to the rhythmic grid and select the point in the composition where you want the instrument to change. Then select the node in question or make a new one like I've done, go to the inspector, click instrument change and choose the instrument that you want to change to. Then play your composition, and when it reaches that point in the music, the instrument should change. So because of how we set the MIDI inputs and outputs earlier, you can actually record MIDI information that you've made in Nodal and put it into Ableton. This means that you can make a really cool idea in Nodal and then move it into a DAW that you're more comfortable using. So to do this, set up a MIDI track in Ableton like we did earlier, press record, and the MIDI will be generated in Nodal and then recorded as MIDI in Ableton. So that's basically it, Nodal in a nutshell. So I'm sure that the software can do a lot more than this, but it's what I've managed to come up with over about the last 4 or 5 days of messing about and even watching a few YouTube tutorials myself. However, if you do get a new piece of gear or software, I definitely recommend just diving straight in and having a go with it, because hands-on experience is definitely the best way to learn how to use something. If you get stuck, don't be afraid to go to a YouTube tutorial and the manual, because I definitely had to do that quite a lot with Nodal. But the hands-on experience that I learned through playing with the software taught me way more than the YouTube tutorials did, and I've probably just put myself out of business, but it's definitely true. So hopefully this video has inspired some of you guys to go and download Nodal, and if you do, please send me some of your compositions because I would actually love to hear them. If you enjoyed the video, please remember to like, share and subscribe as it'd massively help the channel.